I think that it's time to switch to the conclusions that Decock accepted to do. And I think that to present Decock is like to present Cristiano Ronaldo in the World Cup. So,
Leo Messi.
Well,
we compared to Messi.
So the only thing that I can say is that UNSC is a full professor in Louvain, but it's in a phase of transition from Louvain to Oxford because the King Charles III made him Regius Professor in civil law in Oxford. Congratulations, and let's go with you.
Thank you. I hope that my play will be a little bit better than the play of Ronaldo these days at the World Cup. And I think I will never reach the level of Messi as an eternal rival. But I will try and do my best even at this moment when the mics already have decided that it's time to stop. And even the mics are decocked to a certain extent. By the way, my name is not derived from decoctus. My family, is not claimed. We were just cooks apparently in the past, but not failed people. So thank you very much to Stefania. Thank you to all of you, to Stefania for having given me the occasion to participate in this fantastic conference. It's also, of course, a huge honor to be able to give the concluding remarks. At first I thought, my goodness, have I already grown so old that now they already ask me for conclusions? I was also a bit naive and accepting. I thought, oh, fantastic, I can now travel to a conference without having to work on a paper like 2 o'clock in the morning before I take my plane. But, well, I'm afraid that now the moment of reckoning has come. So I will have to pay my debts. Feels a little bit like carrying the weight of the world, of the globe. I saw this fantastic statue at the entrance of the Scala d'Oro here at the Palazzo Ducale the day before yesterday. And I felt a little bit like this atlas when I was preparing my concluding remarks. Maybe just to come back a little bit on my new appointment, I think it's also actually a good thing for us. I mean, I know Stefania because we both grew up to a certain extent in the school of Roma III with Emmanuel Conte and also many of the other esteemed colleagues here present. Well, pay attention to the Roman legal tradition, but in a very historical way. And I think that this appointment is also a kind of acknowledgement of the importance of this particular approach. So this is certainly not only just my victory, but I think it's a bit of victory of our way of doing legal history, and that is what I'm really happy about. But let's start with the remarks. I will formulate 3 remarks. The first is about the project of MICOLL in general, second about our conference today, and the third remark will be a little bit about the future. So my first remark is about the project in general, migrating commercial law and language and thinking law, Lex Mercatoria from the 11th to the 17th century. And I think I can summarize my ideas by referring to this very beautiful bust of Duque, the goddess of fortune and luck and success, because I think this project has truly grown into a fantastic success. So when I saw this statue in Museo Corrers the day before yesterday, I was thinking about the MICOLL project. So I don't know, maybe at some point you will have to wear something like that.
Why not?
So, of course, when you organize these kind of projects, or especially when you apply for so much money by the ERC, you always have to promise that your research results will be groundbreaking for your own discipline. I think most of the legal historians here will recognize that has really been the case, but also that it will be useful for other disciplines. And I think the mere presence of economic historians here in this room, I think of Maria Fusaro, who was there the last days, of the many esteemed linguists we have here, like Nicoletta Maraschio, Matthias Heinz, Francesca Fusco, the art historians in the room. We have Valeria, we also have a crypto art historian, and George Maxwell. I think they would all agree that in their fields, well, MICOLL has also paved the way for new avenues for research. So I think really a very successful project. They also always ask, if you apply for a project, well, how will you attract even more money? How will you set in motion the Matthew effect, right? And that is also something that Stefania managed to do, as we saw this afternoon with this new Justitian project that is really focusing on iconography, on the dialogue between art and law. So at the end of this first remark, I would actually like to invite you to join me in applauding Stefania and her whole team. I don't have a lot of time. I have to proceed at the speed of a summary procedure. So I will be trying to be quick. But also, when it comes to summarizing this conference that we had the last couple of days, I also think it's an honor to with the cornucopia. It was a very fantastic conference where you really managed to bring together all these different specialists. So it was truly interdisciplinary. We learned a lot. I mean, the basic questions that you asked, have the gods fallen, has already been answered by Albrecht Cordes in his fantastic inaugural lecture. No, but maybe Mercatoria and the commercial revolutions should not be considered as gods in the first place. I think that was a fantastic summary, so I will not go in there. Each and every single paper has really contributed to nuancing our view of the Lex Mercatoria and the commercial revolution. I will try to very briefly draw your attention to 5 points. 5 concepts that, in my view, came back all along some of the papers and some of the discussions. And it's maybe the start for a new, the acronym for a new ERC project, the papers project. Or an acronym for the output phase now after the conference. We will have to produce all papers also, I suppose. But so I just tried to bring together the first letters here of the 5 points that I wanted to emphasize. I think we've been saying a lot about the necessity to study further the procedural aspects of the Lex Mercatoria. We have emphasized the need to look at dialogue between law and art. We have also had a lot of discussions on the importance of seeing the links between politics and commerce, between the renaissance of law and the renaissance of commerce, and then constant emphasis on the need to study the sources, to go back to the primary sources. If you allow me, do I have a little bit of time to delve a little bit into the details of each of these points? Then I will first start with the sources, which is, I think, the most important thing for all of us. And having been also trained in the Frankfurt School, the Quellenforschung is, I think, what we really have to do in legal historical research, and you have been doing that in an exemplary way, Stefania and your team. And so really, from the papers from Luisa Brunori, from Maria Fusaro, from Guido Rossi, I took, for example, this idea that we should really invest more in studying archival sources of the notaries, So not just of big institutions, which of course remain important, but also especially of the notaries. Of course, we have also archives of mercantile institutions, like the Casa de Contratación, which has been studied fantastically by Anna Belem. We have, for example, the Rijkshofraad and the whole problem of debt and moratories, which has been studied by Anja Abendrout. So these traditional archives remain important, but the notaries should get more emphasis, is what I took from the discussions, especially not only in Europe, but also in Latin America, for example, also around these consulados, perhaps. But also the personal archives of bankers like Simon Ruiz that Victor told us about. We have the letters of merchants that were very important for Bettina Pfotenhauer's research. Davide Barradella, Matteo Moro, Francesca Fusco, Davide De Concilio, Nicolo Cirillo, all studied important documents, contracts, bills of exchange, and so on, to extract the legal language of commerce from it. And we should continue to do that. There are, of course, the doctrinal sources. I remember a very interesting talk. Unfortunately, you have to cut it a little bit, as it presented Speciale, about, for example, authors like De Luca. We had also Anna Maria Monti, who is examples of very interesting 19th and 20th century Italian legal scholars who thought about insolvency. So that's the first thing. The sources should remain, I think, in our focus, but there is scope for expanding the source basis, especially by going, I think, to these notarial archives. Second idea, so art, we've seen fantastic examples of that this afternoon, so I will not insist too much on that. But the procedural aspects, I think, came up a lot in our discussion, especially yesterday. The idea that maybe there is a lex Mercatoria in the sense of a universal language of commercial law, but that in that case it is more to do with these procedural elements, the speed of the procedures. Even though I think what I took also from Maria Fusaro's comments is that we should not be illusioned also by this, because very often these quick resolution of conflicts do end up in appeals courts, which means that it doesn't really work. But so the procedural aspects need more emphasis, and for example also study of the similarities, dissimilarities between summary procedures in the commercial context and in the canon law context. Canon law, which was after all the first kind of universal legal language in Europe. So procedure very important. Also, for example, in the context of these insolvency law procedures, Giuseppe Speciale emphasized the role of the judge, the procedural role of the judge as a mediator between the primal norms, legislative sources, and the practice of insolvency. So procedure should, I think, it's not always a popular subject. It's not always easy to get money to study procedure because it's the more technical side of law. But I think that's what it makes it even more exciting for the real jurists among us. Renaissance. So Renaissance, I refer here to the concept of revolution, commercial revolution, legal revolution, in our discussions, already starting with introductory lecture by Professor Albrecht Cordes. There was this idea that, of course, it's very difficult to demonstrate, but that further inquiries are needed about this temporal coincidence of commercial forms of renewal, of Renaissance, revolutions, according to some people in the 12th century, and the renewal of the study of the Roman legal texts and of the rise of canon law. This is also, I think, an avenue for further research. By the way, mentioning the term commercial revolution, that reminds me of Chris Wickham. So there have been some criticism launched at Wickham. What I personally find interesting in his work is that he decenters our view of the Mediterranean. I mean, we are now in the Mediterranean in Venice, which was, of course, the central place. But Wickham in his book says the Mediterranean is not just Italy, it's not just Spain, but it's actually Egypt. And Egypt has been there since antiquity. If we think of cities like Aksum, where we can find even stones, where there are Greek, Latin, and Aegean inscriptions at the same time, already in antiquity. So that is perhaps for us legal historians something to keep in mind also in the future, these North African developments, if you want, in Egypt and Ethiopia, at the time Sudan as well. And then the fifth point, the political context, came up in many papers as well, especially if we consider the historiography of mercantile law. Maria Fusaro made us aware of all these biases in the Anglo-American tradition of commercial law. Many things could be said about that. What I think is also important to keep in mind is that commercial initiative very often was linked to the sovereigns and to sovereign initiative. So relation between sovereignty and politics is another avenue, I think, for further research that also would bridge a little bit more the gap between commercial private law on the one hand and public law on the other hand, which is also a little bit of an artificial divide if we study legal history. I will not come back on that, but I think this is also a very important roadmap that Albrecht Cordes proposed to us for the future. So many of the yellowly marked points here have already been dealt with within the MICOLL project by many of Stefania's collaborators, so that's fantastic. I abuse of my position to maybe just say that I really think that also studying more the theological doctrine is a very promising avenue. We've seen that a little bit in Luisa Brunori's talk, where she mentioned Tomás de Mercado, for example, as an important source for our knowledge about commercial law in the Spanish world of the early modern period. But it goes far beyond that, It goes far beyond that. Just to give one example, and I'm especially calling upon the postdocs here, or potential postdocs here, because I have a deadline tomorrow for applications for a postdoc position in UCLouvain for a brand new project on moral juridical advice literature for merchants in early modern India. So in Goa, for example, we had a very important commercial center where all the, it was a hub for commerce with what is now Japan, China, Mozambique. So very important point, and there were Jesuits, moral theologians there to try to give advice to the merchants. And so it's an adaptation of the Roman tradition, the canon law tradition, and at the same time a very interesting source for practical knowledge about trade that happened, because they really say, okay, there was this ivory trade between Mozambique and Goa, for example, and so on and so forth. So just to say that indeed, based on the map of Albert Cordes, there are so many new avenues for research. But my final remark goes a little bit beyond what we have been saying during these days. And, well, it's in a way my attempt to find meaning after the gods have fallen. And as Jake told us, that was never going to find meaning after the fall of the gods in this disenchanted world, after MICOLL, after the myth of Lex Mercatoria. So we are, that was a picture, by the way, taken yesterday night here, from set over Venice, which is beautiful. I mean, even the world where the gods are fallen remains beautiful. So I think this is really the place to try and re-enchant things. And that made me think, Venice and my visit to the Palazzo Ducale, of the iconology that one sees in the Sala del Collegio, one of these many institutional juridical rooms in the Palazzo Ducale that I just had the chance to visit very quickly the day before yesterday. And I was really aghast and appalled when I saw the ceiling of this room, because it's full of legal iconology and full of links, or to say it expresses the links, deep connections between politics, law, and religion, between politics, commerce, and religion. You probably know it far better than I do, but this is really the point that I would like to make. I think in the future we need more studies again on the link between commerce and sovereignty, and that also implies, well, the military. I mean, we are not really talking here about the military, but if you think about it, the Arsenal here in Venice built the ships not just for purely commercial purposes, but also for the warships would also always accompany the naval commercial ships. So there is it's like a combination that it's a little bit like the millstone that you mentioned. You mentioned that the millstone, you cannot take them apart, the military aspect and the commercial aspect, and that automatically also brings us into politics and sovereignty questions. And this ceiling here in the Palazzo Ducale reminded me of that. If you look at it, it's really very interesting. There are inscriptions there that say the Robur Imperii, the strength of our, not empire, but our power that stretches over so many regions across the Mediterranean and even farther away. Well, it is built on, and then you see the iconographic representation of the god of Mars, of the military, and the god Neptunus, of course, the god of the seas, but the god of the seas was also the god who brings people together. So it's a kind of guarantee of, well, national unity is perhaps not the term here, but like urban identity, at least, of the city of Venice. Then you have the words Nunquam de Relicta. And words Nunquam de Relicta are just next to images of the goddess of fate. Giuseppe Speciale has emphasized a lot, the importance of faith for commerce in the moral sense, but also here it's really a representation of the goddess of fate on the ceiling here in the Palazzo Ducale. Faith is really the central word, because there are not only the words Nunquam de Relicta that go with it, but also the word de Republicae Fundamentum is the fundament of our republic. So here we clearly see, religion also as an important foundation stone of this commercial republic. So we have the military side here of this commercial success. We also have the religious side of this commercial success, expressed through the iconography of this very important room in the Palazzo Ducale. And then the other images that you see are of justice and peace. Custodes Libertatis, it's written in the seal. So these are my concluding words. I think we really have to study more this link between sovereignty and commerce. Before really concluding and giving back the words to our chairwoman, I think I have to answer myself the basic question that you formulated, Stefania, for this conference. Have the gods fallen? Well, my answer would be, No, not at all. They still have to awake, actually. We still have to have a look at Mars and Neptunus and Venus and what they meant for commerce. So there's still a lot of gods to be examined for the purpose of the history of the commercial law. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this heroic performance. And I think that now is truly the time to give, to give the floor to Stefania.
I really just it's really just to thank you all for your great papers, for your great questions, for being here, and for supporting me and the project and the team, or having supported me during these years. As I said, I owe a lot to many people, and most of them are here today. So thank you very much again. And now, okay. Thank you very much. I won't repeat this, absolutely. So keep it in mind. It was so very, very heavy word. And so anyway, we have more or less 1 hour to have a shower, and then you can, take a drink maybe, and then we will join here again. We will try to see if we can use the other room, but I don't think so. So anyway, we will meet here to watch the movie so you can relax, and then there will be the dinner, and maybe we can continue our dialogue a little bit later. Okay, thank you so much for everything.